Story 1. When I was in my 20s, I was at a wedding when a woman approached me and said, "Sorry, I just have to say this. You're so handsome." I am now 36, and that's still a core memory in my life that reflects how few compliments men receive. Story 2. A girl approached me in the gym recently and remarked that I didn't sweat much for someone overweight. So, I suppose I have that going for me. Story 3. I had a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, tell me that the purple shirt I was wearing was a great color for me. I am in my late 40s, so it caught me off guard for a moment. I have been chasing that feeling ever since. Story 4. Suspicious, it has happened 3 or 4 times to me in about 10 years, and I always look around to see if they have a group of laughing friends. Story 5. A genuine compliment from a woman feels amazing. Even if there is no other motive than to give it platonically, it can change your entire day. Story 6. When a woman compliments me, it makes me feel strange. I wonder why she is saying that. It doesn't make sense to me. However, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. It is more of a shock than a delight. Story 7. A high school girl told me I have the deepest eyes, and she couldn't look at me because it felt like I was reaching into her soul. That has stuck with me ever since. I'm 45 now. Story 8. I have a t-shirt that features a kitten wearing a helmet with the text, "Let's ride bikes. Meow." It has received more compliments than my appearance ever has. Story 9. You carry that forever, and it changes everything. I always dress up when I fly because I'd rather wear my nice clothes and shoes than stuff them into the suitcase. I get complimented by female travelers and flight attendants on every trip because I am usually the only guy dressed nicely at the airport. So I will obviously never stop dressing up to fly. I once boarded a plane, and the attendant had to take a moment to say, "Oh wow, you're just really put together." I will never forget that or pass up the chance for it to happen again. Story 10. A few years ago, one of my wife's friends said she liked my pants, and I still buy the exact same brand and size to this day. In a similar vein, guys really appreciate when you use their names in conversation. Normally, the only time we regularly hear our names is in a negative context. Story 11. Reading this makes me sad. Here is a real question. As a woman, how can we compliment a man and ensure he perceives it as a compliment rather than assuming we are flirting? Story 12. A girl once complimented me. I just replied, "Stop lying," and then left. Wait, why do I still remember this? Story 13. It happened exactly 3 times in my 42 years on this planet. I am either unattractive, and those 3 tried to cheer me up, or I am so strikingly beautiful that most women lack the confidence to approach me. All 3 instances occurred over 10 years ago, but they still uplift me when I think about them. Thank you for prompting those memories. Story 14. I passed a stunning woman last spring, and she acknowledged my tank top. It was about 50 to 60 degrees, and most people weren't showing skin like I was. I tend to be lazy on my days off. I don't get dressed to hit the gym when it warms up. I just throw something on and go, or if I'm walking toward the beach. Basically, my warm weather attire is mostly tank tops, sometimes paired with a t-shirt. Anyway, she said something along the lines of "Sun's out, guns out," with a smile on her face. At this point in my life, I was realizing that more attractive women were friendlier toward me than ever before, while average women seemed more standoffish. This was disappointing because I actually prefer dating the average, cute type of girl. Not a bombshell, just someone a bit nerdy and charming. It felt like when you do something and it pays off in the end. A huge boost of confidence that you don't find within yourself, but rather through the recognition of your efforts. It was as if others were cheering me on for just being awesome. Story 15. It never happens. I am not famous, not exceptionally good-looking, do not have an attractive girlfriend, and do not have any other form of influence. Story 16. I feel like I'm being sold something or set up. Cynicism. Unfortunately, it never happens, so when it does, you are caught off guard. Story 17. Absolutely love it. I imagine it's similar for women, though. If she doesn't realize we're not interested, it can get frustrating. At least we generally don't have to worry about safety. Story 18. I've received a few compliments over the years, and they always catch me by surprise. including some odd ones like, "I like your legs." I realized 3 weeks later that she was probably flirting. At this point, I'm never sure if it's a genuine compliment or if the woman is flirting. I usually assume the former, which may be why I'm single. Story 19. I just turned 40. When I was 16, I was at the mall with my mom, and a girl passing by said, "My friend thinks you're attractive." They giggled and quickly walked away, and I still think about that moment. Story 20. I've never experienced this, but I can tell you I would have one of three reactions. 1. She's just being nice. I will remember this forever. Am I being pranked? Story 21. I was cutting my hedge one summer when a woman passed by and said, "Take your shirt off and give me a thrill." I looked at her as if she were speaking another language and continued gardening. Story 22. One time, I was walking hand in hand with my girlfriend in high school when a girl I had worked with in the past stopped in front of us and said, "He is way too hot for you." It was the first and only time I have been called hot. That was 22 years ago, and I was both in shock and flattered at the same time. Story 23. A coworker approached me and said that I have a very genuine laugh. I was a bit confused because I had never received a compliment like that before. That was about 10 years ago, and I haven't had one since. Story 24. Fantastic. I was wearing a suit while walking into a mall the other day, and a woman in her late 20s complimented me, saying, "You look so nice, and I love your hair." It definitely brightened my day. Story 25. I am 35 years old and have been approached about 2 times in my life. I feel like it's some kind of dare or that they are trying to get something out of me that isn't sexual. In school, they used to pretend to like me and laughed when I eventually believed them, which gave me serious trust issues. Story 26. Love it. It makes my day, maybe even my week. I certainly don't take it as anything more than a compliment, as I wouldn't want my own compliments treated as anything beyond that. Story 27. It depends on the woman and the compliment. Like anyone else, there are positive, negative, neutral, and strange compliments. The type of person giving the compliment also matters. I am sure that if it were an aggressive woman, no matter the kind of compliment, it would come off poorly. Story 28. My first thought is what they want because I have never experienced that without an ulterior motive. My second thought is why they are lying to me, as I have seen more attractive car crash fatalities than myself on a normal day. Story 29. My inability to manage things is frustrating. I often feel incompetent. It's a wonder I can tie my shoes in the morning, let alone handle my taxes. Story 30. Yes, as others have mentioned, this does not happen often. I remember 15 years ago when I was working in retail in my 20s. An older woman, part of a group of 4 people buying various items, looked me in the eyes after completing her payment and said, "You know, you have a beautiful smile. You shouldn't hide it so much." I have spent the last 15 years reflecting on that moment and wondering if she was serious. Story 31. Uncomfortable. There have been many encounters, but 3 stand out. I walked around to find someone to buy marijuana from, and I found some guys who brought me outside a flat to get it. We rolled it up and lit it. Moments later, a girl from their group yelled, "You're really attractive. Do you know that?" I smiled and said thank you. She continued to talk about it until one of the guys said, "He's 10 years older than you. Leave him alone." She was 16 and apparently high on pills. I started working at my best friend's job around the same time a new girl began working there. A few weeks went by, and one day he decided to tag along with me all morning to tell me how amazing this girl was. He already had a girlfriend at the time, and how much he liked her. Apparently, they had kissed, and he literally spent 3 hours talking about her. Later, during lunch, I was sitting outside eating with him when she came out to join us. A couple of minutes in, she asked, "Did you tell him?" He replied, "No." I asked, "Tell me what?" She responded, "No, nothing, never mind." About 10 minutes later, she said, "You know you're really cute." I glanced at him and he slightly avoided eye contact. I replied, "Thank you." She added, like, "You look really good." I said, "Yes, thank you for the compliment." I awkwardly tried to change the subject, sensing it was bothering him. The story continues with some outlandish events over the next few weeks, but I'll cut it short here. On the way home from a bar with my best friend, I saw two girls smoking, so I walked up and asked them for one. They complied and we talked for a bit. They asked if they could come inside with us and use the bathroom quickly. After using the toilet, they walked into the living room and sat down. One was 20 years old and very attractive, while the other was kind of cute and around 30 years old but had a boyfriend. We got along well, joking and doing some karaoke. I had a good connection with the 20-year-old and got her Snapchat, but later she had to leave and the 30-year-old lingered. She started touching my arm, hanging on me, and pressing her body up to mine. Apparently, she had an argument with her boyfriend earlier and kept complimenting me. I acted like a therapist and suggested she needed to talk to him because he was probably worried about her and should mend things. But she refused to leave no matter how much we hinted that it was late and we needed to get up early for work. She proceeded to put on a military test video and compelled my friend and me to compete along. Eventually, I got blunt with her and told her she needed to go. And finally, she did. She was drunk, so I can't blame her too much. Story 32. I refuse to believe it and assume they want something from me or that they are setting me up to be a joke on social media. Story 33. Not a man, but every time I get a chance to compliment any guy, I do so because I know how rarely men receive compliments. Story 34. I love complimenting people, but I'm scared to compliment men because I feel like either they will get the wrong idea or their girlfriends will be upset with me. Story 35. Most women are terrified because even the slightest attention can be interpreted as an invitation for a transactional relationship. The women I observe complimenting men ensure it is in a context that allows for an easy departure. Story 36. If she is a stranger, I tend to feel suspicious, as if she has an ulterior motive, such as trying to sell me products or expecting me to buy drinks for her and her friends. Story 37. I remember them in great detail. I wish women would do this more. It is appealing when they do this, even when I am not attracted to them. Story 38. They assumed I was American. When they realized I wasn't, they turned on their heel and walked away in search of a soulmate and a green card elsewhere. 1998, San Francisco. Story 39. I am shocked because I am not someone who attracts many women or experiences flirting, except once every 10 to 15 years. It must be nice to be good-looking and receive frequent compliments from women. Story 40. A lady who works in my building, someone I don't know well, but is probably 15 to 20 years older than I am, complimented me on my light blue jacket. I will probably remember that compliment forever. Story 41. In my freshman year of college, we used to go to a place where you could wash your clothes and then drink beer and eat wings next door. My group of dorm friends and I sat down at a table, and the server, a young woman, came over to take our orders. She did a double take, looked at me and said, "Wow, you are really cute. What color are your eyes?" I'm 59 years old now, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. Story 42. I feel like someone has targeted me for organ harvesting. I might wake up soon in a bathtub or not at all. Story 43. Compliments can change a person's day in ways you will never know. I am grateful for any compliments, especially because they are going out of their way to tell me. Story 44. As a person, you always remember it. It makes you feel on top of the world for at least that day. A long look with a smile lasts at least a day, and we will remember it. Story 45. It's funny that from reading these comments, most girls would say, "No, you guys are overreacting. You definitely get compliments. This would be crazy." But no, we remember every single one of them, even between friends. They are not common. Story 46. Elizabeth, a pretty cheerleader, told me I had nice arms in 1994 as a freshman. I have been wearing sleeveless shirts 90% of the time since then. I'm still enjoying that compliment from 30 years ago. Story 47. My husband told me that men are often starved for compliments, so I try to give them when I can, usually complimenting their clothes or something specific. My husband understands and doesn't mind. You all deserve better. I am doing my part. Story 48. It happened a few times, And each time I learned about the latest life insurance, investment options, and organic aromas. Story 49. Complete disbelief and immediate suspicion. If a friend or a colleague compliments me, I'll shrug it off and deflect because I don't like it. If it's my boss at work, my response is to dismiss the compliment. You think I'm doing well? Then pay me more. Story 50. I asked this question as a woman because I have done it twice, and both were successful interactions. However, I wasn't sure if men appreciate that in general or if I was being too straightforward, which could be a turnoff. Story 51. As a woman, I compliment women I have never met all the time if I like something about them. After reading this, I realized I only compliment men I know because I don't want them to take my compliment to mean I am interested in them, especially since I am in a relationship. However, after reflecting on this, I feel bad that I don't tell guys I have never met when I like their hair or clothes. I suddenly feel compelled to express my thoughts more often. I realize women compliment other women because it feels safe, and men probably don't compliment each other as often, which is unfortunate for them. Story 52. The sheer rarity of it, being 65 and never having happened before, would be very strange. My first reaction would be to think it was a joke. Story 53. The quality of a compliment from a woman is not forced. It falls gently like rain from heaven. The place beneath it is twice blessed. It is blessed for the woman who gives and for the man who receives. Story 54. It hasn't happened yet, but I guess I would feel uncomfortable because I dislike compliments, even from women. Story 55. Better than you will ever know. I have a couple of coworkers who occasionally comment on how nice my beard oil smells, and it never fails to make me smile inside for days. Story 56. Nobody ever does that. She must be some scam artist who wants something. Or she is distracting me while I am being pickpocketed or about to be robbed. Story 57. Honestly, I've never fallen in love because of looks, so I'm like, girl, you were very cool. Me thanks. Story 58. A girl complimented me 2 months ago, and I still remember everything she said. The conversation lasted around 10 minutes, but I had to leave sadly. It wasn't anything serious, but it changed my week. I liked her since she complimented me, but since I didn't know who she was, the feeling faded away within a week. Story 59. I would ask how much. Many men are commenting that this is rare unless you are exceptionally attractive, which always gives me pause as I try to find the angle. The few times it has happened and was genuine, I will remember for the rest of my life. Story 60. I hear many people say I am polite, and honestly, it is quite nice. However, I am not sure if they are just trying to be nice because I am autistic. Story 61. I cherish the moment. It's not happening for me as often as for women, so when on occasion I receive compliments for something, I always remember it. Story 62. It happened once at a bar. We hadn't met in person, but we had talked a little on a dating site, and she walked up and spoke to me as if we didn't know each other. Story 63. I am frequently told, I love your accent. In my home country, my accent is often looked down upon. Story 64. 43 here. I can also remember the few times this has happened. As usual, I always think, what is their angle? Story 65. It's rare, and I hold on to it forever. 25 years ago, a woman told me I gave the best hugs, and I try to live up to that every time I give one. 2 weeks ago, a woman told me she noticed I had lost weight and congratulated me. Keeps me motivated in the gym. Story 66. I can guarantee you that if you ask any guy in this group, once he receives a compliment from a woman, he will physically glow for the rest of the day because he is that happy. I have experienced this myself. Story 67. I still remember a girl telling me her coworker thought I was cute at a Wingstop. That was about 5 years ago. I didn't even see her coworker or care to, but it made my week. Story 68. I received compliments about my eyes and beard. It was a brief moment of happiness, and that's all I can say. Story 69. It feels like a core memory. Ask any man who has ever had the privilege of receiving a compliment from a girl, and it is the equivalent of asking anyone over 30 what they were doing during September 11, 2001. Story 70. I honestly wish I could compliment men more often, but I have found that sometimes they get the wrong idea and think I am flirting with them. Story 71. A woman once told me, "You really take care of yourself." Caught me off guard, and I still regret not acting on it. It was just so unexpected. Story 72. This post highlights how infrequently men receive compliments from women. Outside of my wife and mother, I cannot recall the last time a woman complimented me. I remember a girl in middle school telling me I had pretty eyes, which was approximately 27 years ago. I still remember the place and the person. Story 73. Before I met my wife, I assumed that when a woman approached me, which has only happened a couple of times, it was a practical joke. Story 74. Say thank you. That's very nice, and I appreciate it. It's like what you would normally do when humans express gratitude. You could also make a post on Reddit for confirmation. You never know, right? Story 75. Once I was on the subway when we came to a stop. A young woman said, "You have really nice hair," as she hopped out. That was over a decade ago, and I still think about it every so often. Story 76. It initially made me feel good until they asked me for money or favors. Unfortunately, because most unprovoked compliments were obviously preludes to begging, it feels like a red flag and puts me on alert. This has also been true on dating apps. When someone attractive seems forthright in their attraction to me, it has often been a cover to promote their content, illegal services, or scams. Story 77. I am flattered. In 45 years, there have been only 2 women to offer compliments. When I met my wife and a waitress I worked with 24 years ago, who complimented me on a wool sweater. Those are the only 2 times. Story 78. I was so shocked that I ended up stammering an awkward reply. Then I replayed the moment in my head with the appropriate response for years afterwards. Story 79. The few times it happened, I had no idea, so it took me a while to realize. Then I felt foolish. Story 80. Firstly, I am in total shock because in over 50 years that has never happened. Secondly, I would feel like $1 million. Women do not typically give compliments as far as I am aware. Story 81. I have self-esteem issues and don't believe in myself. I've received a few compliments but genuinely think they are just being nice and do not actually mean it. Story 82. I blush, get tongue-tied and walk away, then regret not taking the opportunity to talk to her. Story 83. A girl in junior high said that she loved my eyes. I am 38 years old, and it is the only compliment I believe I have ever received. I think about it fairly often. Story 84. I feel like I am about to be scammed. I mention this as an attractive man in my mid-40s. Someone is trying to rob me. Women do not typically compliment men. Story 85. It's awesome. I remember most of them. I wear a lot of suits for work, and occasionally a lady will tell me I look great, and it makes my day. I believe that you shouldn't hold in compliments. If you think someone looks nice, tell them. Just be cautious when complimenting certain people to avoid making them feel uncomfortable. Story 86. I will probably propose to them, feel really awkward, and then replay the moment in my head for the rest of my life. Typical guy things. Story 87. I was flabbergasted because it almost never happens. The other day, as I was walking out of an elevator, a woman said, "You wear your frames well." I must have looked dumbfounded and quietly muttered thank you as she walked away. That's the first compliment I remember in years. Story 88. Scams and tricks often appear in various forms, such as pranks or traps. Sometimes people lose a bet similar to the game Truth or Dare. Women do not randomly approach you or offer compliments without reason. If you know her and she is a friend, that is a different scenario. Story 89. Honestly, it feels really good, especially lately since I'm turning 30 next month. I can see the effects of aging and my previous party lifestyle. I feel like I'm starting to look worn down, but every time I receive a compliment, that feeling goes away for a few hours. I think the reason women don't compliment us more often is because they know how quickly a friendly remark can turn into something uncomfortable. Story 90. Men rarely receive compliments, but when it occurs, especially a genuine one that the man wants to hear, It feels incredibly special. Story 91. Most times, it's awkward when people complain about your appearance. However, it can be uplifting if the feedback is positive. Compliments on your clothing are less uncomfortable and make you feel like you're at least dressed appropriately. Story 92. I feel great, but then I question what she meant by it and whether I am overthinking or if she wants to marry me. Story 93. My ex-lover said he never deleted my message. You look good in those baggy pants, which I texted to him back in high school. Story 94. When I first got my hair cut by my current hair stylist 6 years ago, she mentioned that I looked cute again when she was finished. Whether there was something behind that, if it was just casual conversation, or if she said it to earn a bigger tip, I still think about it to this day. She has also said it a few other times. Story 95. I am a woman, but any man I have ever platonically complimented has been completely taken aback. I told a man in yoga this morning that his ringlets were beautiful, and he was delighted and surprised. Story 96. I am looking for lavalier microphones and someone filming with their phone from a distance. It is clearly one of those wholesome content farming trends on TikTok. Story 97. I love it. Often, I'm not expecting it, and sometimes it even makes me feel a bit uncomfortable or nervous. But I still love it. Story 98. My girlfriend and I attended a wedding together about 10 years ago. When she saw my suit and tie, I received the only compliment from a woman who wasn't my mother. She said, "You look so handsome in that suit, but don't tell my boyfriend I told you that." Story 99. I went to college about 1,000 miles from where I grew up. I was in line waiting to enter a club when a girl coming out stopped and stared at me. She told her friends they were going back in because of me. I honestly thought someone put her up to this. Once inside, we started talking and it turned out she was from the next town over from me. I guess I looked like every other guy from high school she ever dated. We danced, hooked up a bit, and then went our separate ways. We never talked again. This was over 30 years ago and I still remember it. It was one of the few times something like this happened. I remember them all. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.